Hey guys, carrying on for the mid-season finale of The Flash, Season 2, Episode 9, Running to Stand Still, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. This has been a very strong season, and I was definitely hoping this would be a very satisfying episode, and I gotta tell you guys, I was a bit underwhelmed by this episode. There were some really great things about this episode, I am gonna say that, but this really didn't feel like a mid-season finale. It really didn't. In fact, even the villains we got in this episode, I don't understand really what was the point of them other than one. Other than the trickster, I don't really know what was the point of them. We'll get into that. I didn't hate this episode by any means. There were some very, very good scenes in this episode. It just didn't really feel like a mid-season finale. And I didn't really get that mid-season finale feel till the last scene of this episode. That was the only time where I'm like, okay, that feels like a mid-season finale. Everything else this episode really didn't feel that way. I still really did love the episode. I didn't hate it by any means. I thought it was a really, really great episode overall that I overall really enjoyed. But let's just get to it because I have a lot to say about it. I really do have a lot to say about this episode, and I really do want to talk about it. So basically, we start off with Wells. He's running from Zoom in a dreamlike sequence. He's in the breach room when Zoom grabs him by the throat and holds him up. Wells begs Zoom to let Jesse live, and Zoom puts him down and just says "Merry Christmas." Now, this was a very good scene. Everything that we see with Zoom in this episode, there's not much. That's the thing. There's really not much with Zoom. There's not much talk about him. There's stuff, kind of with him. There is stuff here and there, but I thought we were going to focus more on Zoom, and we didn't. At Jitters, Iris brings Joe a Flash toy for Christmas, and he feels bad that he doesn't have anything for Barry. And I love the little part where she's like, should I buy a Green Arrow? And he's like, I don't really want something of that crazy. Man, I thought that was pretty funny. Just showing that Joe doesn't really support Oliver, but also I thought it's just pretty funny the way he reacted to that. So he feels bad he doesn't have anything for Barry, and he feels a little bad that he never had a son to lavish his attentions on. And let me just say, this probably might have been, I think, Iris's strongest episode because just in general, I thought all her scenes, like Candace Patton, I think her name is, that plays Iris, was fantastic this entire episode because, of course, she has this secret that she's been holding for so long from Joe, and it really starts to get to her this episode. That, of course, Candace Patton, yeah, that's her name. That, of course, being that, the son that Joe thinks, didn't, that his wife didn't have, is in fact alive. And, of course, Iris knows that, and she wants to tell him, and you really see that throughout this episode. So, at the crime lab, Barry and Patty are making out when Iris walks in on them. Now, if anything, this episode was very much about Barry and Patty. They don't have the conversation I thought they were going to talk about, though. Remember that whole thing with Patty seeing Wells? It didn't really amount to anything, honestly. I thought it was going to mean something a lot more, but it really didn't amount to anything. And in general, everything that happened in last week's episode really didn't amount to anything. I'm not saying it wasn't great. All the setup last week was great. There's just nothing about it here, and I was thinking Patty and Barry were going to have a conversation about what happened with Wells, and they don't really have it in this episode, so we'll get into that. Basically, Barry and Patty are making out when Iris walks in on them. Patty goes back to work, and Barry starts talking about how happy he is to Iris. And Iris and Barry have not had too many scenes this season. They've had some, but not too many, because Iris has been off doing her own thing for most of the season. So I really like the scene just showing how supportive Iris is. She starts to cry. He wonders what's going on. And she tells Barry that her parents had a son that Joe doesn't know about. His name is Wally West. And it's a really great scene. Candace Patton's acting here was just really great because, I mean, think about it. There's this brother that she knows she has, but she can't tell her father about, and it's just eating up inside of her. Barry hugs her, tells her that they can tell Joe together, and it will be okay, and outside it begins to snow. And by the way, guys, this definitely felt more like a Christmas episode than last year's did. Last year's I got that feel, but this definitely felt like a Christmas episode, while last year's felt like a true mid-season finale. So, at Star Labs, Jay and Caitlin are trying to figure out how to close the breaches and stop Zoom, and these two are just being so adorable, and Cisco's making fun of them. He's literally like, just kiss already. I thought that was really funny. So then after a bit of comedy where Jay pretends there's no Christmas on Earth 2, I love that joke, by the way. There's several times in this episode where Jay pretends that there's no Christmas on Earth 2 when there really is. Caitlin invites him to a party, and I like these two are getting closer. I think they're really good together. I'm enjoying them overall, and I think they're setting them up very, very nicely. So Cisco leaves to go find Wells, but bumps right into him on the way out, and it was pretty funny the way Cisco was acting. I mean, he literally just creeped right up to him. That was really funny. So at Iron Heights Prison, it blows in some large windows, and Weather Wizard enters, tossing two guards aside. He brings the weather in with him and uses his powers to free Captain Cold and the Trickster, who's been sitting in his cell obsessing on killing the Flash, drawing pictures of it and cutting out tree decorations in the shape of the lightning bolts. Now, let me just say, Captain Cold, I did not feel served a place in this episode. One, because I thought his arc could have been a lot more compelling than what they were going to make it. I mean, I thought he was going through this arc of, am I good or am I bad? I really thought we were going to see that in Legends Tomorrow, and in this episode, all of a sudden, he's a bad guy again. It just didn't really work for me, because we had that huge revelation in episode 3, where Cold realized, and by the way, that revelation that he had almost seemed like the ending to his exit on the Flash. That seemed like the exit to his character. That's what I thought that was. That we were not going to see Captain Cold after that episode. I have no idea why he was in this episode. I really don't. The only person I felt need to be in this episode was Trickster, and we'll get into why Trickster needs to be in this episode. But Captain Cold and Weather Wizard, I really didn't feel served a purpose here. I get the Weather Wizard wants to band all three of them together. I understand that, but I don't know, really wasn't feeling it here. So Trickster's been sitting in the cell, obsessing on killing Flash, drawing pictures of it, and cutting out tree decorations in the shape of the lightning bolts. By the way, Mark Hamill is just so great, so over the top, and he's doing an awesome job. So Joe walks Barry to the prison, explaining that Martin will throw Patty off her guard. She's determined to go after Trickster, though, and leaves. So at an old Trickster hideout, Trickster says that all three of them want the Flash dead. Cold asks what makes Trickster think he can do it with the extra backup, and the Flash being weakened by Zoom, and basically Cold and you see Cold and Trickster are just about to start fighting each other when Jesse cools them down, and that was interesting. So at Star, Cisco comes up with the idea to develop the Weather Wand, and Barry tells the whole group that he knows Cisco did that once before in the timeline he erased last year. And I like that they know what they're doing. Like, they know how to handle them. They've been with these metahumans before, so they know what they're doing. He leaves, waits his lab with Iris to talk to Joe. She tells him that Francine was pregnant when she left, and Joe walks past her to process, and it's a really great scene. I like that Iris told Joe here, and he looks out the window. He asks for more details. Iris tells him that the son is Wally, and apparently Wally, the reason Joe's so affected is because Wally is the name that Iris would have had if she was a boy, which I thought was very interesting. So Joe leaves to go back to work, saying that he needs time, and some really great scenes between Joe, Iris, and Barry in this episode. By far, the strongest part of this episode was the stuff with Wally West, and some with Patty that we'll get into that I thought was very well done. So when Iris and Barry arrive home, Captain Cold is there waiting for them. Barry pins him to the wall and threatens him. McCold says he's rigged his gun to blow up if he drops it, and he says he isn't interested in helping kill Barry, but when Barry tries to recruit him to help track the others down, he passes on that too. So, I understand that he's kind of trying to find a place here, but he's supposed to be in Legend Tomorrow, and this really didn't seem like he's going to be there. This was probably the first episode where they're setting up Legend Tomorrow, and it didn't feel like they were setting anything up, and I get that people don't like that they're doing that. I understand they don't want to do that as much and they want it to contribute to the story. But I really didn't feel he fit into this episode. And I get that he doesn't want to work with Barry, but he doesn't want to be a villain either. So he needs to kind of find his place. I think it's a good arc overall. I just don't really like the way they're handling it. I think they could have handled it a lot better than they did. And I really was not as into this as I wanted to be. To be honest with you guys, this was probably my least favorite part of the episode. Everything going on with Cold and Weather Wizard, I just didn't really feel like they fit in here. I didn't really know why they're here. Again, I get that they're trying to form a team to get revenge against the Flash. I think it's very interesting. It's something I've wanted to see for a while, honestly. It really is. Just when you have a season where you're dealing with when you're dealing with Zoom, I would have expected them to focus on Zoom just a bit more. So, at Starlabs, Joe is staying alone, thinking about a time years ago when Iris was sick at school and he had physical symptoms. Knowing that Iris needed him, he feels bad that he's never had that for Wally and that he didn't take any steps to track down Francine after she left. And now he just feels really bad because, now he knows why things went the way it did with Francine. He said he was being selfish and Wally paid the price. And Barry tries to pull him out of it and tells him, it's not his fault. He had nothing to do with it. He didn't know about it. And yes, I do agree with Barry, but I understand why Joe's so upset. I mean, clearly this is this is his son. He wants to bond with him. He wants to, be in this kid's life, even though this kid doesn't even know that Joe is his father. He has no idea about this, and this is very complicated. And I like the way they're handling this. They're doing something that could be potentially very melodramatic and making it actually very effective, and I think they did it very well in this episode. I honestly didn't find it too melodramatic, I have to say. I found it to be a pretty, subdued arc. I think they were handling it very well, and I really did enjoy it. It wasn't too over the top by any means. So at the police department, Patty and Singe watch the TVs as Trickster takes over the signal and tells the city he wants to kill the Flash and calls him out. The team figures out where Trickster is broadcasting from by noticing a background detail when tracking down to a toy company. When the Flash arrives, Patty's already there, and so is a small, literally army of deadly Dreidels. So Flash grabs Patty, creates a cyclone, lifting them up and out of the toy factory, and outside she explains her motivations to the Flash. And this scene I loved. I really loved this scene. I thought this was definitely very well done. But again, didn't really feel like a mid-season finale, but I thought it was a good revelation overall. She blames herself for the stick-up that got her dad killed because she ditched work at the family business that day and leaves, and she feels like she killed her dad, and that this is her fault, that she could have stopped it somehow, and that's why she wants to get her initial revenge on, Cold, because she feels, not on Cold, on Trickster, because she feels if she gets her revenge on Trickster, then that will be like, not getting, for her dad, to get revenge on Trickster for killing her dad. Definitely very powerful stuff, and I really love that scene. So at Star, Barry calls Patty, who isn't answering, and I like that Barry's telling her that, look, this isn't your fault, you had nothing to do with this, this really isn't something that you should be upset about, but she really felt like she could have stopped Trickster from killing her father, and obviously she didn't. So this is obviously something that's really, that's really struck her, and she's really upset about it, and Jay and Caitlin show him the wand prototype, and at the mall, Trickster is impersonating Santa, which I thought was just hilarious. I love that. And handing out boxes to kids to open the next day. God knows what's in them, but I thought that was just hilarious to see. Mark Hamill really kills this Trickster. I'm not saying I don't love these characters. I really do love the Weather Wizards. I really do like Captain Cold, and I really do like Trickster. I just didn't really know what they really, contribute in terms of mid-season finale. I did think Trickster was awesome this episode, though. So, in the breach room, Zoom pops into Star Labs and tells Wells he has to decide, then gives him one more day to do so and jumps back into the breach. So, I don't like that this entire arc is revolved around Wells, but then we'll get to the ending, because that's when things get very interesting here. So, Team Flash used a device they conjured up to figure out Trickster is about to attack the tree lightning ceremony when Barry finds him on a nearby rooftop and tries to stop him from attacking. The crowd using the wand, Weather Wizard flies away, Barry deactivates Trickster's powers. He comes crashing to the ground in the town square where Santa Trickster is. They explain that they've handed out about 100 bomb boxes to kids, and I knew that there were going to be like bombs in them or something, and Barry has to let them kill him or they'll set off all the bombs. So basically, they have to do this, and at Star Labs, Cisco and Wells figure out a way to track down the bombs and set about doing it. Barry is being slowly killed while they track down the first of the bombs. So as Weather Wizard hands the Flash over to the Trickster to finish, the team use a drone to send that first bomb through a breach in the sky above the city. They manage to tweak it in to attract the ears and pull them all through the breach, and once the bombs are all gone, Cisco calls out to Barry's headset and tells him that the bombs are gone, allowing Barry to use his speed and the Weather Wand to take down both villains down in seconds, which I love that Barry's able to take them down. He's dealt with them before, he knows what their weaknesses are, so he just finds their weakness and does the same thing he did before and takes them down, which I thought was very smart of Barry to do that, just having that prior knowledge. So then, however, Patty shows up and using Cisco's boot device from the season premiere, immobilizes the Flash so that she can kill Trickster, and Patty manages to talk her down, and it's a really great scene. I love this scene because you don't know if she's going to pull the trigger and actually kill Trickster, but I like that Barry's able to stop her, just showing that he really is her anchor in terms of limits. He really is the one that limits her and tells her, look, this is not a good thing to do and you shouldn't do this, and she instead arrests Trickster, and Jesse is suitably impressed, and I really love seeing that. Really great scene there. So at Star Labs, Joe comes to see Barry's talk with Francine, and we didn't get to see the conversation. I was a bit upset. I wanted to see more of the conversation between Joe and Francine. He seemed really broken up about it. I'm like, can we see this conversation? Like, you're just going to tell me about it? It's the perfect example of show, not tell. I want to see this conversation. And yes, I get the Barry and Joe scene. It was a great scene. I will say that. The scene between Barry and Joe was great. I just would have wanted to actually see the conversation between him and Francine. I think it would have been a lot more effective if we did. So he's talking to Francine, tells Barry that he didn't realize he needed to forgive her, and he says now he's ready to move on. Now he's ready to start a relationship with his son, and he's excited to meet him. And Joe then gives his watch, which is a gift from his father to Barry, which I thought was really great that we saw that. Basically, he said he's always said he would give it to his son, and just a really great scene because Barry really is his son to him, even though he doesn't really have much of a relation with Wally, and Wally doesn't know that Joe's his father, keep in mind. Wally has no idea, which I think makes things much more interesting, because if Wally would know, we get this really stupid arc where Wally probably wouldn't want anything to do with Joe, and he'd want to let him back into his life. So rather than having a stupid conflict like that, I think it's good that Wally doesn't know that Joe's his father. It just makes things more interesting. And I like that Joe finally did give Barry a Christmas present after he didn't know what to give him. Really good scene. I definitely really enjoyed that. So, from the computer terminal at Star, Barry tells Wells, though the two-way mirror, that he was right, that the other Wells was right, that maybe he'll really never be happy, and I really thought this was a great scene here, because Barry kept talking about this throughout the episode, how, Wells told him in the first episode, not Wells 2, not that Wells, not Wells from Earth 2, we're talking about, Eobard Thawne right now. He told him that he will never be happy, and he says that he thought that he was right, that maybe he'll never be happy, but only if he hangs on to his hatred for Wells. He says he forgives him. He actually says, look, I forgive you. I understand what you did, and I forgive you. And just then, Wells 2 sees him looking at him and calls up on the intercom, asking if Barry needs him for something. Barry invites him over for Christmas, I think this is kind of the way for Barry to move past all of the hatred he has for Wells and actually accept this Wells, which I really like seeing that, because let's face it, Barry is one, Wells has really felt out of place. He doesn't really know what place he has in Barry's life, and Barry obviously does want him to have some sort of place in his life, and this is a very good way to do that. I really enjoyed seeing that, and I thought that was really a great scene. I really love that. So, Wells says he can't celebrate without his daughter. Really sad, but, that's kind of what he needs. He needs his daughter, obviously. So, at the West home, Jay helps Caitlin hang mistletoe, and again, he jokes around like he doesn't know what a mistletoe is, and then they kiss, which I thought was really great, and I think they've been handling this relationship really well. I like that they don't really have a relation right now. They're just kind of flirting, and I think it's pretty cute, actually. There's a knock at the door, and it's Patty. She says that she needs to tell Barry about something she's been dealing with alone, and brings him a matching Christmas sweater to hers, and obviously, we knew that it was going to be about Wells and everything in that revelation, but that's not what it is. It's about a matching Christmas sweater, and I was like, really? That's what they're going to talk about? But, I understand they want to keep things open for the rest of the season. So there's another knock at the door, and Barry at first thinks it's Wells, but it's Wally, and Joe invites him in and introduces him to Iris. I found this to be a bit just like, we need a cliffhanger, so there you go. That's kind of what I saw this as, because it was obvious that we were going to see Wally. They released photos of Wally at the door, and I was a bit disappointed that we really didn't get to see more of him. But I am really looking forward to seeing what happens to him, because if you guys don't know, Wally is a main character. Wally is billed as a main character. I'm surprised Patty isn't, because Wally isn't, Patty isn't. I don't understand that, but Wally is billed as a main character. So, I can't wait to see what his character is like. I love it. He doesn't know who Joe is, and Joe has to pretend he doesn't know who he is. So, this is going to be very interesting to see how he deals with that. And then we get to the ending of this episode, which the ending of this episode really made up for how anticlimactic I found this to be. I really love this ending. Zoom comes to meet Wells, telling him time is up, and of course, he kept saying that. So, Wells wants to know, says he knows why he's sending villains. He wants Barry to get more powerful and faster. So, to fatten him up for slaughter, and that's very interesting. So, Zoom brings Jesse to him, and then he takes her away and tells him to decide, and I like that Zoom is kind of torturing him with Jesse, just showing, look, if you want to see your daughter again, you have to help me out here. So he tells him to decide, and Walt says he will help Zoom steal Barry's speed in return for Jesse's life, and that's how this episode ends, and that's how the mid-season ends. And that is very interesting, seeing Wells team up with Zoom. That I find very interesting, and I can't wait to see what happens with that, because obviously, I don't think Wells wants to do this to Barry, but the only way for him to see Jesse again is for him to do this. So, I think that was really great, and now we know what Zoom is doing, and I've been wanting to know what is Zoom's motive, and now we know what it is. That he basically wants to get Barry to be more powerful to fatten him up for slaughter, which is much different than Eobard Thawne. I know people are saying, oh, it's kind of like Eobard Thawne. No, it's not. Thawne wanted Barry to run the fastest he's ever ran to run himself out. This is about fattening him up, fattening him up so he can cut him up and slaughter him. That's what he wants to do here. So they're going to now try to steal Barry's speed. I don't exactly know how they're going to do this, but this is going to be very interesting. I don't really know what's going to happen here, and that just makes me very interested in seeing what they're going to do here. That's, I think, overall is very interesting. And the way that Zoom is torturing Wells over Jesse is just very interesting. I can't wait to see what happens with that. Wally. Obviously, Joe doesn't really know where Wally should belong. I mean, he doesn't really know where to put Wally. He knows that he wants Wally to be in his life, but Wally doesn't know who the hell he is. You know, all he knows is that there's some random guy at the door, and that's all he knows him by. He doesn't see him as his father. He sees him as some random guy. And Joe needs to understand that, and it's really sad, but that's what's going on right now, and we're going to have to see what Joe does with Wally, because he needs to handle this in a way where he doesn't make it obvious that, you know, he knows that he is his father, which obviously Wally doesn't. So I'll see what happens with that, because that definitely is going to be very interesting. Jay and Caitlin, I love these two together. I really do. I hope things work out well with them. I'm really liking what's going on there. I like the way we're handling Barry and Patty. You know, Patty clearly does not want to have this conversation with Barry. It's something they're going to need to have. And we see in the promo that Barry and Patty are getting closer, but he's not telling Patty that he's the Flash, and he needs to tell her that. That's something that she needs to know, because if she finds out before him, that could end up really bad for them, and I don't want things to end up bad for them. I actually really do love these two again, and I want them to be okay. I want things to work out well for them. Cold, Trickster, and Weather Wizard. Trickster I thought felt very well in here. Even Weather Wizard. Cold essentially had nothing to do in this episode, honestly. He talked to Barry for a few minutes, and that really was it. He honestly really contributed nothing to this episode, and I was a bit disappointed. When you use Captain Cold, you gotta use him well. Episode 3 is a great example of doing that. Even though I wasn't as fond of Episode 3 as others were, I still thought it was a great episode. That's how you use Captain Cold, is making the center of things. Never, ever make him a sidekick. Captain Cold is not a sidekick. It's that simple. Weather Wizard, yes, he's a sidekick. I don't really care about his character. Cold, however, is not a sidekick, so don't ever make him a sidekick. Legend of Tomorrow, that's where he belongs, is on there, and he really didn't feel like he fit into this episode. It's just one of those things where you know he's going to be on another show, and he doesn't feel like he fits into the show anymore just because he's going on to that. So I'll see what happens there. Overall, guys, what are my thoughts on this season of Flash so far? Really solid season, I have to say. I think they've really been building up very well. I've enjoyed this season significantly more than last year's. I think this has been a really great season so far, and I didn't hate this episode by any means. It just felt a lot smaller, and I really felt we were building up to something bigger. Now, yes, that cliffhanger was very good. It's just the episode in general amounted to nothing. It doesn't really get us anywhere new except for Wally and the whole Flash situation. But the whole 3 main villains really did nothing to the story except make Barry question himself. That's really all they did, and I want a bit more than that. I just wanted some more. I was a bit underwhelmed. I still really enjoyed it. I was just a bit underwhelmed by what happened in this episode, especially when you look at last year's and how big and grand scale that was. I mean, that really was a huge episode, and there's a lot that's going to happen in the second half of the season. But overall, guys, let me know what you guys thought of this episode, and were you a bit underwhelmed? I think I was definitely a bit underwhelmed. And we'll see you guys next year, which will be for the mid-season finale of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I cannot wait for. It is going to be awesome. And apparently someone's dying. I don't know who's going to die, but I'm hearing that someone's going to die. Don't know who, but we'll have to see. And we'll see you guys for that. Flash returns in January, and I can't wait for that, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.